this morning. It's Mike on Monday, but it might not be Monday, it might be Tuesday, it might be Wednesday or another day, except Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, I'm going to have to step things up a bit. Somebody did say in the comments, Mike, you've already got a job, when I was looking for a job, which I don't think I am now. I'm not sure. Anyway, already got a job, which is YouTube. The thing is, this is Cheryl's channel. I sort of wangled my way in, to put that mic on Monday on. Well, when I was made redundant, I did. Moved on a little bit since then. A bit of water's gone under the bridge, and it water, as my dad would have said, water, bit of water under the bridge. He had a very broad East Riding of Yorkshire accent, because Yorkshire's a big place, of course. So East Riding of Yorkshire. And things that would stand out if you spoke to him, you'd wonder what on earth he was on about. I mean, he died some years ago, he was 90 odd, so. But water was one of them, meaning water, stuff you drink, just in case I can't say it. Horses, yeah. Cottons was curtains, the stuff at the window. Cottons, that was always a good one. And shots, you meant shirts, I'm sure there was many more, but those are the ones that would stand out for me as I remember them. There will be others. I might chat about them a little bit as time goes on. He grew up poor. Just by the way, we talk about growing up poor and being poor. No. He was one of 7. His dad, so my granddad, who I never met, came home from the war, First World War, with no legs. He'd lost them on the battlefield somewhere, Germany, France, I'm not sure. But the Germans had taken him in, looked after him, put him in hospital, and got him well enough so that he could go home. So, and when he got home, he was a troubled man. This is my granddad I'm talking about. He was a troubled man. There aren't many people in our family who drink, a lot, as it were. But apparently he was an alcoholic. He used to beat his wife up and cause all sorts of trouble. But he came back from the war with no legs. And as my dad said, sired 7 children. Yeah, so he had something about him, didn't he? When he came back, he was given this particular chair. I don't know what they were called, but you could, propel the thing. I'm doing this because it was cycling, but with his hands, because he didn't have any legs. And he was given one of them. But also he was given what was a council house, and it had some land with it. So eventually the lads, which I think my dad was the youngest of them, they would work this bit of land. But my dad, from being, 7 years old, from what he said, he worked at a local pig company, a very small place. And my dad and his dad, they had a horse and cart, and they would take pig swill from the cafes and restaurants in Hull up to Dunswell, which is about 7 miles, in big metal containers. So they'd go around Hull collecting the pig swill, put it on the cart, and of course take it back to the pig farm. and a pig processing. My granddad's wife eventually left him, which must have been hard back then, gosh. And they got a little house, tiny little house in the slum area of Hull. And my dad would go to school with no shoes, and they didn't have any money for anything. Obviously they ate whatever that was, but yeah, hard life. Anyway, what was I talking about? I've no idea what I was talking about. I was saying hello and how often these might come on. Yeah, I can't remember what I was talking about, so I'll chat to what originally I was going to talk about. I've been having a think about what I watch on the telly and who I subscribe to, and I'm looking at them now. There's only about 20 YouTube channels that I regularly watch. Obviously, one of them, Cheryl Life at 50. Got to, yeah. That's my wife's channel. Vice Grip Garage with Derek. He's really clever man. A car program it is. But he's so funny. Makes me laugh every week. Every Saturday morning I watch him, and that is a good hour, sometimes more. So sometimes I have to watch that over a couple of days. Who else? Sometimes watch Travel Trolls TV. But Maddie, who's the girlfriend of the main character, if it is, they have a motorhome at the boat lodge. She shouts, that lass. Can't cope with that. Proper DIY. That's a good programme if you're into DIY and hints and tips. That's good. Who else? TV classics. Another one is Mr. A. Builders. He's funny. He's a builder. So, yeah, he's funny. He's a builder. It's a good way of summing it up. But, yeah, the other thing, I used to watch the news. I don't anymore. I used to watch the BBC news and something called Daily Politics. I don't anymore. And I used to watch other news channels, Talk TV, which is news, and GB News. It's only recently I've stopped watching them. So if the news is on the telly, I'll watch it and just see if I can catch up. But I'm really disappointed at them, to be honest, because if you watch GB News or Talk TV, all they're doing is having a big go at Labour. And if you watch the BBC, they're having a go at Nigel Farage and Reform. And if you watch Sky News, they're having a go at Reform. So you're not really getting a great deal of news. I used to watch CNN, but all that does is has a go at Donald Trump. Well, you might, whatever your politics are, you might think, well, so what? Well, I don't want to watch the news that I agree with all the time or disagree with all the time. I want to watch the news, see what's happening around the world. I think they've lost the plot a little bit. Can't remember the last time I bought a newspaper. Yeah. Anyway, that's some of the telly I watch. The other TV, I guess, that both me and Cheryl watch, well, we like Strictly. I think I commented far too much about one of the female dancers on there last week. A tall blonde lass. She had like a cowboy outfit on, but what looked like stockings. Anyway, I think I made too much of it. Yeah. Anyway, both watch Strictly for different reasons. And I do miss Bruce Forsyth. Yes, I know he was very old and blah, 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 but he was entertaining. He wasn't particularly funny back then, but he was entertaining. What else do we watch? We don't watch Netflix or Prime Video because we unsubscribe from them. I think we saved, about £10 a month, maybe more. And that's quite a lot, isn't it? £10 a month. So we don't watch them. I tell you what I watch on YouTube. On, I think it's called, now I'll have a quick look. British TV Classics. Minder's on there. I used to watch that back in the day, and I still like watching it with Arthur Daly. Hello, Arthur. He was the barman, wasn't he? Hello, Arthur. Yeah, so I still watch that. And we both me and Cheryl like watching the old films. I like watching Marilyn Monroe. So I've got her autograph, just by the way, and I do, it's actually authenticated and all the rest of it. I'll show you that. But yeah, I have Monroe's autograph. She was a decent actress, you know. People do have a go at her. As well as being a very beautiful woman, which of course she was. You watch some of her films that you might not watch. A film called Niagara. If you haven't seen, particularly good film with Monroe, watch Niagara. That was a really good film, and she acted well in it. The rest, she just, I guess, a lot of the time she had to be the dumb blonde, didn't she? Which I don't mind. I'll watch it, Yeah. So that was a bit about the telly that I like watching. I was going to talk to you about some of the other jobs that I've had. I think what I'll chat to you about, because it was a good job, was a job I had where I was buying computers, redundant and broken computers, for their precious metals. Yeah, I'll just cut there and then we'll carry on. So I'm holding this as steady as I can. There's Marilyn's signature. Ugh. So it's got, I don't know if you can see that, it's got an authentication stamp, and I have got a certificate. It's out of a scrapbook, autograph book. On the back of it is somebody else's. Don't know whose, but there's Marilyn. Cheryl bought me this for my 50th, amongst other things. Yes. Anyway, then I thought I'd show you it. Yeah, so I got this job. I left one company with my manager, who was a chemist. Doesn't matter what he was. And I eventually was one of the managers at this company on the heavy side of things. Storage, processing, engineering, that sort of thing. Anyway, we both left and we worked for a company that was based in New York. The company was called ASK, Anna Sol Kaplowitz. And the lad in America, the bloke in America, who was a very wealthy man, he wanted to take his production from New York into the UK because the regulations here were easier than they were in New York. And I guess it must have been a little bit cheaper here, must have been. As it happened, he kept his facility in New York as well. So the first thing we had to do was find a big shed, warehouse, massive. Found that, hired the lads and lasses to work on the shop floor, bought a ramp for the forklift truck, bought forklift or hired it. But the next thing to do was to bring stock in. So the raw materials, where did they come from? Well, what we were doing was buying scrap and redundant computers for their circuit boards and circuitry, because we wanted the precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, all sorts, and also semi-precious metals like palladium, that sort of thing. There was also some rare earth metals in there as well. So my job initially was to set up the production area on the shop floor, which basically meant we bought a load of benches, and behind every bench was a ladder or lass, and they had a set of tools to take apart computers, big uns. Sometimes the computers on the bench, they would be cash registers. And the lad in New York, the boss, he bought something like 20,000 cash registers from J.C. Penney in America. And he shipped them in 40-foot containers to us in Hull in the UK. They were offloaded, put on a bench, stripped of all their metals, but in particular the circuit board, the computer printed circuit board. Circuit boards, if you have a look at them as they were back then, had tracks on them. And the tracks, they may have been covered in some sort of lacquer, but the tracks were gold. And then they would run down to what looked like a piano key on the edge of them. And each of those piano keys, as it were, they were gold. And then they would plug into a plug with loads of cables coming out the back of it, but the plug-in bit, they were plastic with gold. And a lot of the times, the actual CPU on the circuit board, they had a gold chip on them. Gold, silver, or platinum. So there was a fair bit of precious metals on these boards. If you go back in time when computers, were first not invented but made public, or certainly for industry and business, there was a lot of gold on these circuit boards. Nowadays, you can take 1 ounce of gold and cover 3 football pitches with it. They've got the technology. We had the technology. Back then, to put gold onto a circuit board, it was dipped in a vat of gold, and through something like electrolysis, the gold would stick to the right part of the circuit board. Russian ones in particular were heavy in gold. But anyway, these computers were brought into the UK and stripped for the precious metals. You got other metals which were for the scrap trade, and we had different skips for them. But yeah, so that was, and so I set this production line up. We had thousands and thousands of computers and cash registers to strip. Some of them now, particularly the computers, the old IBMs, you would have kept, and you could sell them as they were. They wouldn't work, but people would buy them because they collect such things. Back then, we just smashed them up. Yeah. So that was the start of it, really. And then eventually I got a job where I would jump in a car and run around the UK buying these old computers off scrapmen around the UK, including the East End of London. I met some characters down there. But anyway, all good lads. I'm going to say all good lads, and they were. So I would buy them and then organise transport to pick them up and send back to the production line. And then the other place, I got a contract with, and I can't remember the name of the company, but it was a big company It might come back to me. And you know, the hole in the walls, I got a contract to pick up the hole in the walls, as it were, the machines that had been swapped out of banks and shops. They were in storage at Hewlett Packard. That was it. They were in storage at Hewlett Packard at just outside London, not Watford. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But somewhere like that. That might come back to me as well. So I got the contract with them, and again, thousands of them to come back to the UK. And then the boss had this idea. He had done a trip to Russia, because Russia was still a place where they were using older computers, and the computers were rich in gold and silver and all sorts. And what he thought was, well, the Russians would sell into Poland. So I got a job of visiting Poland over about a 3-year period. I would visit Poland very often and go around different sites in Poland, companies, buying scrap computers and shipping those back to the UK, or sometimes have them shipped to America. I have 2 stories come to mind. One of them's a bit longer than the other, if you don't mind me telling you. Have a listen maybe, but anyway. So I visited this facility, which was a storage facility in Poland, but for ex-army vehicles, and they were Russian vehicles. So they were all redundant, as it were, scrap, but there were some of them still running. And they had listening devices on them, a huge funnel, weighed about a ton, maybe half a ton. They were about 12 foot long, and in diameter, maybe 4 or 5 foot in diameter. They were a funnel. And these were listening devices. So you'd have that funnel, and that was attached to something that was attached to a computer on the back of a truck, a flatbed truck, a wagon. And I went to have a look at these, see if they had any value. And what I had to do was take a sample of the metal from the funnel, which I did. But what I did was they were covered in like a silver paint. I scratched off the silver paint and then scratched off the metal from below it and sent these samples off to America. And what it was a stainless steel funnel that had been covered in gold, gold leaf, but still of a reasonable amount that it was worth cutting up these funnels and gathering the cuttings and flying them to America. They were flown out of there to America for the gold and silver. What they'd done, they had, it was a big stainless steel tube, that was worth some, but stainless steel contained silver. Then they had a silver coating on them, and I don't mean the colour, I mean the precious metal. And then they were coated in gold and then painted, because these trucks were going to be out, in the middle of battlefields or somewhere, I don't know, or listening to whatever a spy truck basically, I think, anyway. Yeah, the cooling systems would be twice as big as a garage, but it was all scrapped, But anyway, the company went into putting together computers, and I did get a contract with British Coal for that company. I went to visit British Coal at their headquarters in a place called Colesville. Who knew? And I went to see the buyer there. Behind him, he had a huge blueprint of a steam engine. And I knew Fred Dibner, the steeplejack. Many of you won't know who Fred Dibner is, but became a TV personality. But he was a steeplejack and he loved steam engines. Well, I knew him a little bit. because I used to go to the steam rallies around the country, which is another story, but anyway. So I started talking about this steam engine blueprint to him. We got on, and I think over the course of a year, it may be about £150,000 worth of computers offers. So when was that? It was in the 90s. So it was still a reasonable size order, yeah. But I eventually left that company and I set up my own business with another lad called Norman. I'll go into that in another one because I've probably talked enough here about jobs. So, yeah. All right, I'm going to have a cup of tea. Don't go anywhere. I forgot to mention, it's had my haircut and my ears wussed. You notice? I've still got the same top on. You're probably thinking, make her in that top every time. I'm not. I've got 2 or 3 of these. It saves time choosing what I'm going to wear in the morning. Anyway, they're always clean. So if you always see me in this top, I always wear one of those underneath. But yeah, got my haircut. Cheryl did it for me. It's free. Yeah. So Willow's joined me down here. Looking particularly bright, ain't you, Willow? Eh? She's looking at Cheryl, who is making a nice cup of tea out here.
Cup of tea, kettle's on.
Right. She's working her coat, so she's...
I'm on a break.
Taking a quick break. Yeah. So, I don't know how interesting all of that was. I guess to some people living East Riding and hearing a few of those words and how they're pronounced might be a bit interesting. As I say, if somebody did say talk about the jobs you've had, I've had loads of jobs. I've also run some businesses, but I don't know how interesting they are, Anyway, I spoke about that a little bit, didn't I? And being in Poland, and I did visit Russia once, just crossed the border because I wanted to. I was in Poland and I thought, I want to cross the border. So I did, and then I came back. Anyway. Yeah, so that was about it. For this one, I think it's long enough, isn't it? You'll notice these are going out at odd days. I'm doing my best to keep track and what have you of that. Do you like the photos I'm putting on? They're the ones that I took years ago when I had a great interest in photography and landscapes, buildings, all sorts really. Yeah. But yeah, if you liked them, let me know. There'll obviously be some on this one at the beginning and the end. And I'll keep putting them up. I think quite nice with a bit of music. Anyway. Yeah, so I'm going to see you on the next one, I hope. I don't know when that's going to come out, but hopefully you'll drop in. Or actually, are you dropping in to see me or am I dropping in to see you? I think I'm dropping in to see you, aren't I? Yeah. Okay. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.